Hey guys, welcome back to Clownfish TV. This is Neon, and apparently I was asleep at the wheel. A couple of days ago, it was announced that Hasbro put a new dude in charge of Wizards of the Coast, in charge of Dungeons and Dragons, and he's actually from Blizzard. He's from World of Warcraft. So let's talk about this. But he's also another Microsoft guy. So there are some changes going on at Hasbro, and I don't think things are going to change in regards to D&D anytime soon. Before we get into it any further, please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. Go out and check out the Derezzed podcast. Check out Derez, check out the Clownfish TV Audio Edition podcast, and please support us on Patreon if you're so inclined. You'll get podcasts early. This is coming from GeekWire. We're going to go out to GeekWire. We're going to go out to belloflostsouls.net, and I don't think things are going to change for Hasbro. But here's the deal. So GeekWire says longtime World of Warcraft leader John Hight named president at Wizards of the Coast. John Hight, a longtime executive at Blizzard Entertainment who led the Microsoft-owned gaming giants the Microsoft-owned gaming giants World of Warcraft arm has joined Hasbro subsidiary Wizards of the Coast as its new president. So for all those people who were criticizing me when I put World of Warcraft orcs in the thumbnail, piss off. It's like how I can do it. Now it's fine. But that's okay, because orcs are people too, guys. Orcs are people too. Hight announced last month he was leaving Blizzard, where he spent more than 12 years, first as executive producer and vice president for WoW, and later as general manager of the Warcraft franchise. Hight will also oversee Hasbro's digital gaming business, which has made up 42% of the toy and gaming giants revenue in the first quarter. So we're gonna talk about that, because they're still bound and determined that they're gonna make it all video games. They're gonna make it all mobile games, and that's all the news around Hasbro. All the good news now around Hasbro is Monopoly Go's doing really good. Baldur's Gate did really good, but Hasbro didn't make that, right? And this is coming after Hasbro fired a bunch of people at Wizards of the Coast. I think they got rid of the dude in charge, Kyle Brink. I think they got rid of him. I mean, people are saying he left on his own. I don't know if he did or he left because this guy was coming in. But if you're all like, hey, this is going to be great. It's going to be a return to form. We're going to have more, wow. We're going to have more of a wow factor. We're going to have more of a wow factor with D&D. I wouldn't count on it. If you listen to what they're actually saying, this is all corporatese. I think that it's definitely another indicator that they're going all in on video games. They're going to go all in on virtual tabletop, and they're going to eventually turn D&D into a shitty mobile app. And it would not surprise me if if they didn't decide that they were just going to outsource the tabletop games to somebody else to make, because Hasbro's already doing that. They're already outsourcing Power Rangers toys. They've been outsourcing a lot of, older franchises, IP, to like Basic Fun and other toy companies, Super 7. I could totally see Hasbro getting out of the toy business and the physical media business completely. And we'll talk about that, because there's another recent interview with Chris Cox, and he basically said that there's not a lot of money to be made in toys, but he knows some investment bankers if you want to go get a job working for an investment banker. And this is all about just staying in the game long enough to get that golden parachute to cash out. And I don't know what Hasbro is going to be at the end of it. I don't think they want to be a toy company, though. Former Wizard CEO Cynthia Williams stepped down in April. She got pushed out. I guarantee you she got her ass shoved out the door, because she did so much damage in the 2 years she was there, between the OGL debacle and the AI fiascos and the Pinkertons and so many failures on her watch, that she got gone. So before you're like, oh, well, that's because they put a woman in charge and now they've got another white dude. Well, don't worry, they balance it. And we're going to talk about that, because they want you to know in the same release that just because they hired a white dude to run Wizards of the Coast doesn't mean they're giving up on diversity and inclusion, doesn't mean they're giving up on DEI, because they hired somebody else to offset that. And they literally come out and say it. Williams was named CEO at toy maker Funko in May. Okay, so she wound up at Funko. God, Funko's a sinking ship. I didn't know she wound up at Funko. That's a sinking ship. Why the hell would you want to be Why would you want to be the CEO of Funko? Is that where she went? I think they pushed her out. I honestly think they pushed her out. Hight will relocate from California and be based in Seattle, according to a spokesperson. So yeah, he's not even going to be, well, Wizards of the Coast. It makes sense. I was like, he's not even going to move to Rhode Island, but that's where WotC actually is Seattle. Renton, Washington-based Wizards is known for its flagship games, Dungeons and Dragons and Magic the Gathering. I really hate that they have rewritten history. And this was one of the biggest issues I had with Kyle Brink and some of the other people at WotC, is that to celebrate the 50th anniversary of D&D, they basically threw the OG creators under the bus. They want a memory hole TSR. They want a memory hole Gary Gygax, Dave Arneson, so many other people that worked on the original Dungeons and Dragons. Hasbro didn't create it. WotC didn't create it. They bought it. But now all of a sudden it's like, oh yeah, it's the Hasbro owned. Hasbro's been making Dungeons and Dragons for 40, 50 years. No, they haven't. Hasbro announced Thursday it hired former Bungie leader Holly Barbakovi as Chief People Officer. Okay, so this is where it gets interesting. She previously was Vice President of Human Resources for Wizards. Now, if you go out to Bell of Lost Souls, we'll go all the way to the bottom here. It's Barbakovi. Holly Barbakovi, I have never heard that name before. Barbakovi returns to Hasbro, having previously been WotC's VP of HR from 2016 to 2020. After working at Bungie as Chief People Officer and later Chief Operating Officer, Barbakovi returns to Hasbro to ensure Hasbro remains an inclusive global employer through the company's transformation. She's a DEI officer. That's what she is. So they're hiring a white dude with a pedigree, admittedly. I mean, the guy worked, on World of Warcraft for a while, and gamers are like, yeah, World of Warcraft guy. But then they're offsetting it with like, oh, by the way, yeah, we did hire this white dude, but we're also going to bring her back to make sure DEI is still a thing. So let's go out to Bill of Lost Souls. They're talking about, they said, yeah, it'd be great if, somebody from Azeroth, but no, it's a guy who worked at Blizzard. Business Wire first reported on it, detailed the appointment of John Hight as president of Wizards and Digital Gaming, as well as Holly Barbakovi as chief people officer. As Hasbro CEO Chris Cox has repeatedly stated, the future of WotC is digital. It's digital, and that means gaming. Wizards of the Coast has several gaming studios now, so having someone used to working in the industry makes a lot of sense. Per Business Wire's reporting, Hight's new role is a significant step in Hasbro's strategic focus on digital experiences in video games. So let's go out and look at the stock. The stock is actually up, and I think the reason the stock is up, well, one, when they got rid of Cynthia Williams, the stock went up pretty significantly, and I think it's getting a bump again because people are like, oh, look, Hasbro has a plan now. D&D and Magic make money. They have a plan, and they're going to pivot to gaming. Because if you go out to the stories on Hasbro, it's all Monopoly Go. They talk about Monopoly Go and digital, and this is the future of Hasbro. It's basically, Hasbro's going to be an IP farm. That's what I think they're going to be at the end of it. And Chris Cox had another interview last week in Entrepreneur, and he said some things that concern me. He said, they asked him, what's the most exciting project you're working on? He said, the challenge with that question is I can't tell you about it. They're talking about Beyblade. He said it's the best version ever, and they're already flying off the shelves. Yeah, I've seen Beyblade around. Squid King used to get Beyblades, and I don't even know how to play the game. It was like he used to buy them, and then we just transform them, and they were basically just like transformer balls. But, I never figured out how to actually play the game. The second one is a refresh of D&D 5th edition this year. So it's not even 6e, it's D&D 5.5. D&D 5th edition has been out for 10 years. This is probably the most comprehensive rules update ever. We're pairing it with a really cool virtual tabletop to accelerate what digital play looks like. Now, he does say this. He says, what advice would you give to someone looking to enter the toy industry? When you go into the toy and game industry, you can make a great living. You can do a lot of good in the world. You're basically working in an industry that generates smiles, laughter, and companionship. But it's not the industry where you'll make the most money. If you want to do that, I know a couple of investment banks I can throw your way. So he's going to turn Hasbro into a video game company is what I think he's going to do. But the problem with that is we've seen so many studios, like Embracer-owned studios, just implode. And I have to wonder, they're already making these deals to outsource. Now, I could conceive of a time, again, where Hasbro just outsources the production, the actual production of like the tabletop version of D&D to like Paizo or somebody else that wants to do it, because they don't seem to really want to be in the business of making toys anymore. And we're going to see more and more deals where they just take some of their IP that, like even Littlest Pet Shop. Littlest Pet Shop, this is kind of not related to D&D, but it is. It was one of Hasbro's biggest brands. My daughter was huge in Littlest Pet Shop, and that's Basic Fun doing it. My Little Pony, that's Basic Fun. Like Viewmaster, Tinker Toy, all these legacy things, Basic Fun makes them now. And Playmates are going to be making Power Rangers figures. And how long until they outsource everything that's not a core brand to them? Everything that's not G.I. Joe, or everything that's... Oh, geez, wouldn't it be weird if they outsourced G.I. Joe to Bobby Valla? Like Valaverse actually made the G.I. Joe figures via license. That'd be wild. Well, okay, so speaking of which, there's actually a former Hasbro executive who left and he started Extensive Enterprises, I think. And so obviously he's in the G.I. Joe, but I think he's actually pulling together a lot of these different companies that are doing work for Hasbro. So I think what's going to happen is Hasbro's just going to be this IP farm. They're the rights holders. And then what could potentially happen is if they take a nosedive at some point, then you're going to get a company like Embracer Group come in, or Tencent, or somebody come in and buy them. And then they have the keys to the candy store, including Candyland, to all this stuff that Hasbro has acquired over the years. And Hasbro has basically played Highlander with the toy industry. They've gone around and they've bought up like every legacy toy company. They own Kenner, they own Milton Bradley, they own Parker Brothers. Pretty much every toy brand that wasn't Hasbro that we grew up with, at least my generation grew up with in the 80s and 90s, Hasbro owns it now. TSR, so many companies. And I could see some other company just come along buying them. And I could see a guy like Chris Cox just trying to position the company for that. So I worked at a company one time where it was a private equity firm bought the company and they put their own CEO in. And his job, he had a 5 and a 10-year plan. His job was basically to get the company profitable and give it curbside appeal so somebody else would buy it. Right? And that meant pivoting the direction of the company to make it as palatable to potential investors or potential buyers as possible. Now, if you're going to sell your company and you own all this IP that's worth something, in movies and video games, whatever, you're going to try to position Hasbro as like this video game giant, this company that has all this great IP that can be mined for games and movies and stuff like that. Toys don't matter anymore. I mean, they really don't. We've done multiple videos talking about, the toy industry now is focused more on adult collectors. What happens when they get too old to buy toys? Technically, we're all still too old to buy toys. But I mean, what happens when they're 80 years old and they're like, yeah, I ain't buying no more Transformers at 80 years old. Because the kids today don't care. They really don't care. My kids don't care. My kids, I mean, they played with toys, but not to the extent that like our generation did. Gen Z didn't really have a connection with the toys that we had because we didn't have iPads. We didn't have the internet at first. We watched our Saturday morning cartoons and they told us to go buy He-Man and Transformers and My Little Ponies and Gem and all that stuff. And so that stuff means something to us, but it doesn't mean anything to the kids, coming up next. So I don't know. I mean, I don't know. I personally think he's going to try to turn it into a video game company, and then there's an exit strategy. I think he's gonna pump and dump. He's gonna turn it into a video game company, get it basically printing pure profit at that point, license out stuff, and then he's gonna turn around and dump it on an investor or something, private equity firm. It wouldn't surprise me. Again, I don't think Embracer's in the position to do it, but if somebody like Embracer would come along and say, hey, yeah, we'll give you $10 billion for Hasbro or something and make it part of our portfolio and then we'll just run it into the ground. Yeah, they'd totally do it. They'd totally do it because that would be a win for investors. And this is the problem when you're a publicly traded company is 99% of the time, the investors don't give a shit about the product. All they care about is how much money they're going to make on their stock. That's it. Private equity firm, they don't care about the product. They want to look at the numbers and be like, are you making money? Okay, well, you're not making money. Cool. Just outsource all the toys because toys lose money. They wind up at Ollie's. Games lose money, whatever. It just print money. That's all we want you to do is just print money. Get us a return on our investment. Then we're gonna dump it. And that's what I think is probably going to happen at the end of it. I mean, it could be years until that happens. But yeah, they made sure to get in there that they've got their DEI officer. So I don't think things are going to change. I think they're actually going to get worse. Just a hunch. Please subscribe for more pop culture news, views, and rants, guys. We'll talk later.